In the last lecture, we learned how to create a section and how to fill in the townships with sections. Now we're going to be talking a lot more about sections and how we're going to break down sections, that is, subdivide sections. But before we do, I want to talk to you about some definitions so we can understand this terminology as we go forward. First one I want to talk to you about is an aliquot part. An aliquot part is a French term, and what it means is equal with no remainder. And it's used for any of the normal subdivisions of section. Now you'll see this as we go on, and I'm just going to refer to them as aliquot parts. But before we do, let's take a look at a couple more definitions that we're going to need to know. Now the next definition I'd like to talk to you about is lots, or government lots. A lot is a non-aliquot subdivision of section based on the previous definition. This parcel of land would not be equal the same way an aliquot part would be. So we can use lots to call out parcels of land that are not aliquot. And again, I have pictures. We're going to see more about this as we go on. Now, let's talk about the subdivision of section. First of all, you need to know that section 2-13 of the 2009 manual states, by statute, in the PLSS datum, the term straight line is used when describing a line of constant bearing. Now, a constant bearing crosses each meridian with the same angle. Now, if you don't really understand that now, don't worry about it, because we're going to be talking about that so much, it will become second nature to you by the end of this class. That I promise. Now, as we're going through the subdivision of section, you have to know that a section is not subdivided by area, but it's subdivided by aliquot parts. That is, you can have 4 aliquot parts evenly dividing the section with no remainder, and each one of those aliquot parts has a different area. So we're not subdividing by area. Now, when we subdivide a section, the first thing we do is we subdivide it into quarter sections by running straight lines, line of constant bearing, between the quarter corners. That is, from the north quarter corner to the south quarter corner, and from the east quarter corner to the west quarter corner. That will divide the section into 4 quarters aliquotly. There'd be 4 aliquot parts. And if we need to subdivide the quarter corner, we do it the same way, except we use the 16th corners, or halfway between the section corner and the quarter corner. And we would divide it north, south, and east way, and divide the quarter section into 4 aliquot parts. Again, has nothing to do with area. It all has to do with the aliquot parts, dividing it from midpoint to midpoint, from quarter corner to quarter corner. And that's how we would subdivide that section into aliquot parts. Now, under the general laws, broad terms, the unit of administration is the quarter section. That is, you would divide the quarter section into 4 aliquot parts as well. And that would be the quarter section. And that's usually the smallest area that the government is going to deal with. And there are exceptions to this, and when we get to those exceptions, we'll certainly talk about them. Now, it should be pointed out that when a section is subdivided, as a rule, it's the private surveyor that subdivides the section. The government surveyor would be responsible for creating the section and subdividing the township into sections. And then if the section is to be subdivided further in the field, that would be the private surveyor's job to do that. as a rule. Again, there are exceptions, and that's why we have to always read the record, the field notes, to find out exactly what happened. Now let's talk about the subdivision of a section by protraction. Now there's another new term. And by protraction is the draftsman in the office, government office, who would subdivide the section, but only in the office. They would subdivide it, the map, on the paper, but would not do it in the field. And when you see a government map and it has dashed lines, those are protraction lines. That is done by protraction. So, upon the plat of all regular sections, the boundaries of the quarter sections are shown by broken straight lines connecting the opposite quarter corners. If you were to see that, you would know that that was done in the office by protraction and not surveyed in the field. If it's surveyed in the field, it's going to be a straight, constant line. Now, sections bordering the north and west boundaries of a normal township. That's where we're throwing the error. Except section 6, and we'll talk about section 6 in a minute, are further subdivided by protraction into parts containing 2 regular half-quarter sections and 4 lots. And we'll see this coming up when I show you a graphic of this. But what we're trying to do when we subdivide a section, we try to make as many aliquot parts as possible, and the rest of them will be non-aliquot. Therefore, if you remember the definition, they're going to be subdivided into lots or government lots. Now, section 6, in the northwest corner of the township, the error is going to the north and to the west. So in section 6, lots are protracted against the north and the west boundaries, and so contains 2 regular half-quarter sections, 1 quarter section, and 1 quarter section, and 7 lots. Again, don't get confused. I have pictures. Now, as I just stated, sections are protracted so as to provide the maximum number of aliquot parts. That is 160 acres, 80 acres, and 40-acre units, or regular subdivision of sections. The remaining areas of these sections are shown as lots, commonly referred to as government lots. Now, this is what I was just talking about in the last slide. But what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to subdivide this thing properly, the way we subdivide, center to center and all that kind of stuff, corner to corner. And then once we break it down as much as we can into aliquot parts of approximately 40 acres, then we're going to have to go in and subdivide the rest of it by using government lots. Now here's what I'm talking about. First of all, let's take a look at section 8. You'll notice that the yellow lines are the sections and the dashed green lines are the subdivision of the sections by protraction. We also know that midway between the section lines are the quarter corners, every half mile. So you'll notice that in section 8 we have a north-south dashed line and an east-west dashed line. Now what that did is that subdivided the section 8, into 4 aliquot parts. Now let's take a look at section 5. Again, we have the center lines from the quarter corners to the quarter corners, subdividing the section into aliquot parts. However, in section 5, it borders on the township line, so we threw all the error as far as we can to the north. You'll notice that from the southeast corner of section 5, I have 40 chains and then 20 chains, and then I have frac, F-R-A-C-T, that stands for fractional, and that's whatever the dimension is, that's where we're going to put it. So we have an aliquot part of 40 and 40 in the southeast and the southwest quarter of section 5, then we have aliquot parts in the south half of the northeast quarter of section 5 and in the south half of the northwest quarter of section 5. And then we have 1, 2, 3, and 4, and those are the government lots. And they can be fractional. Now, east-west, they're 20 chains apiece, but north-south, they're going to be whatever they are because that's what we threw the error in. Now, the same thing is happening to section 7, except it's going against the west instead of the north line. But if you take a look at section 6, we have fractional lots on the top because we're throwing all the error into the top. And we also have fractional lots on the west because we're also throwing all the area in the west. So we have a quarter section that's aliquot. And in the northeast quarter of the section, the south half of that is aliquot. And the northwest, just the southeast of that northwest is aliquot. And in the southwest, just that east half is aliquot. All the others are lots taking up that area. So this is how we're going to subdivide sections using protraction to get as many aliquot parts as possible. Now, if a section that are invaded by meanderable bodies of water, rivers, lakes, or something like that, are running through the section or in the section, or by approved claims. And what I mean by that is, let's say that there was somebody that had a piece of property before it was subdivided with the public land survey system, or there was a town there, or a military reservation, or something like that. That's not part of the PLSS. Are in variance with the regular legal subdivisions. They're subdivided by protraction into regular and fractional parts as may be necessary. So again, if we run into these situations, we're still going to subdivide our section mainly by protraction. That's what the draftsman would do in the office, would subdivide the section to create as many aliquot parts as possible. And where they cannot create an aliquot part, they would create a government lot because it would be fractional, it wouldn't be aliquot. Now, we've been talking about government lots, and boundaries of lots usually follow the quarter section and quarter section lines. But extreme lengths or narrow widths are avoided, as our area is fewer than 10 acres or more than 50 acres. If you could make a government lot close to 40 acres, that magic 40 acres that we want to subdivide things to, that would really be good. But if you have one government lot that's like 39 acres and right next to it you have a government lot that's maybe 4 acres, there's a good chance that the draftsman would just combine the two and make it one government lot. And that's what we're talking about here. Now here's what I've been talking about. You'll notice this is section 21 in some township. And you'll notice down at the bottom I call it an invaded section. That's because there's a river that is going through the east part of the section. And in the southwest part of the section, there's a town site. The boundary is different than a normal aliquot part subdivision of the section. So what the draftsman is going to do here is he's going to make as many aliquot parts as possible, and the rest of them are going to be in government lots. So you'll notice that he starts subdividing. He draws a line between the north quarter corner and the south quarter corner, and then the east quarter corner over to the west, where the west quarter corner would have been if that town site wasn't there, but he stops at the town boundary. And then he subdivides it further by, in the west half, he draws a line that is the quarter corner, or what we call the 16th corner, or halfway between the section corner and the quarter corner on the south line, and draws it straight north. but he can make an 80-acre aliquot part in the north part of the section, so he does that. And then by subdividing that again in the north half through the 16th corners, he creates government lots 3 and government lots 4. Now, here's what we have going on. If we take a look at the number 1, that's a government lot because it's not aliquot, okay? It's something other than 40 acres or an aliquot part. Same thing with government lot 2. Now, 80 is an aliquot part, it's 80 acres. Then we have lot 3. And then we have lot 4. Now, lot 4 is an interesting situation because if this was a perfect section, lot 4 would be an aliquot part. But for some reason, the draftsman decided to call that a government lot. And so when this plat was approved by the Surveyor General, that means that that piece of land right there is considered a government lot and not an aliquot part. And we also have lots on 5 and 6 and 7 and 8. We have another 80-acre tract, and then we have lot 9, a small little lot up against the township. And then down in the southwest corner, we have an aliquot part of 40 acres. And then we go over to lot 10 and lot 11. Now, the draftsman calling lot 4, which should have been an aliquot part, calling it a government lot, that's what he did for whatever reason we'll never know. But that is going to be considered a government lot, even though it is aliquot. And you'll notice the way that the government lots are numbered, just like how you would number sections in a township. You start and you go to the west, go down to the east, go down to the west, and go down to the east. Boustrophondonic. That's what they were doing there. And that's the way that they were supposed to be labeled. Now, you'll see a lot of plats that aren't labeled that way, but you got to check the record. Check that plat, check the record. Now, in this lecture, we talked about subdividing the section. We talked about what an aliquot part was, what a government lot was. We talked about protraction and how the government draftsman would subdivide the section on the map, on paper, not in the field, by protraction, by those dashed lines. We also talked about the smallest subdivision that the draftsman would make would be 40 acres. Now, just a few slides ago, I talked to you that area was the least important thing. And the reason we keep talking about the 40 acres as the smallest is because if you had a perfect section, which you never have, but if you had a perfect section, it would be 640 acres. If you were to divide that aliquotly by quarter corner to quarter corner and quarter corner to quarter corner, the north, south, east, west, you would have 4 aliquot parts of 160 acres. If you were to further divide one of those quarters into 4 aliquot parts, or the quarter section, the quarter of the section, you would have 1/4 of 160, or you'd have 40. That's where we have the 40 acres. It's aliquot, and if it was a perfect section, we would call it 40 acres. But it would still be an aliquot part, and we usually don't take it any smaller than that, than the quarter section of 40 acres if you have the perfect section.